All right, guys. Sorry for keeping you all waiting out there, guys. I know we had intended to go live this evening at 7 o'clock. Um, and there's my audio. I was just double checking my audio in the background, actually. So excellent audio is going through okay to everybody out there. So, guys, this evening we are going to be remembering Howard Marks. Howard Marks, if you don't know, he's an amazing man who smuggled a lot of hash into the UK and Ireland in his time as a hash smuggler. He has a number of books out, and if you're not a friend or a friend of books, you can catch a movie version as well that entails the kind of the true story of his life. It's called Mr. Nice, aptly named after the man Howard Marks, Mr. Nice. So the first person I would like to introduce this evening, guys, he's known as Paradise Paddy. Paradise Paddy had the absolute pleasure of getting to work with Howard Marks while he toured across the UK and Ireland and even further afield into Europe, I believe. But Paddy, if you wouldn't mind, maybe starting off and telling us how it is that you got to start working with or got to know Howard Marks.
Just to say, I didn't go across borders of Europe with him. He did all that on his own. I just looked after his Irish gigs on the island of Ireland. Thanks very much, Martin, for hosting this great event for the great man Howard Marks on the fifth anniversary of his passing. So yeah, thanks. As I said, well, how I came across Howard Marks, same way as everyone came across him, I suppose, was his book, Mr. Nice, which, little fact for your viewers, sold over 1 million copies worldwide and still selling very well. But per capita sold more copies in Ireland than anywhere else, even in his home country of Wales. And so that basically says a lot in relation to how Irish people have a great grow for this great man, Howard Marks, or as I affectionately knew him as the Woolly Welsh Wizard of Word.
The Woolly
Because
Welsh.
yeah, he was an academic and a graduate of Oxford University.
That's right. He
Um,
got a second class degree
yeah,
in nuclear physics, I believe, of all things. Like
yeah,
incredible. Like John, the man went on then to live the life he lived afterwards. Like crazy.
absolutely. From humble beginnings, like a small mining village, Kilfilling in Wales, to rubbing shoulders with the elite of Oxford, and that's literally where he made his connections. Because small village in Wales. What do you do in the 50s, 60s? Born in 45, just grew up loving Elvis and Eddie Cocker and that kind of rockabilly stuff, and didn't know anything about hash. It was a kind of an elite kind of pastime. And as he says himself, the postmen weren't smoking back then. Was more. It was more kind of an elitist thing. But he came across, met them all, and then that forged relationships with the ambassadors' sons and daughters. So he was able to get stuff going from Karachi in Pakistan and Nepal through everyone that he met uh, through Oxford
Yeah.
and other places in London as well and such. But he smoked his first spliff when he was 19, and he just loved it. And he could not understand how it was illegal. LSD was actually legal at the time, and he dabbled in that as well. He was experimental, as all students should be. And yeah, so it just took on a life of its own from there. And then he just became an audacious drug smuggler, and he's got serious connections to Ireland because he was the first one to utilize Shannon Airport as it was. And that opened up many connections. And
Uh,
how
he
just
did that with the help of the IRA as well, wasn't it? Interestingly enough, I believe it was Jim McCann or someone along those lines that he started working with first in Ireland.
Yeah, yeah. The great Jim McCann. I've never met Jim, but I've met a few of his friends, all characters. Uh, Everyone from Belfast is a character anyway. But these guys were at the premiere. You said Howard's film or Howard's book, Mr. Nice, was turned into a film. So when I live in Kilkenny, so we have a Cat Laughs or we have a comedy festival here each year, and I do be on the fringe with the laugh or with the Laughing Stock Comedy Club, and I've had a few good comedians that wouldn't be on the main bill. And this particular year, I just decided that I was going to hunt down Howard Marks because I actually seen him in 2001 in a lovely little venue here in Kilkenny called Clears, where he was on another tour, a smaller tour, and that was amazing. You could smoke inside back then, cigarettes, but the whole place was a whole cloud of cannabis. And one of those standout gigs. They say you can't remember much on cannabis, but that's one of the gigs you never forget. So it was always at the back of my mind. Wouldn't it be great to get Howard Marks? And I just did a small bit of research, rang a few contacts in London, and it turned out that Howard Marks was doing a gig in Letterkenny that weekend, the June Bank holiday in 2009. And I says, oh, well, I'm in Kilkenny. And the guy in London goes, Kilkenny, Letterkenny, is it far? I said, no, they're more or less beside each other. Of course, anyone who knows their geography knows that Letterkenny and Kilkenny couldn't be nearly further apart. One's northwest, one's southeast. So I'm in Kilkenny organising a few gigs within the Fringe Comedy Festival. And I ring a friend of mine in Offaly, June Bank holiday weekend. Anyone who back then, when you were gigging June Bank holiday weekend, you're obviously going to be gigging. But as luck would have it, this guy wasn't gigging. And I says, Lynchy, you're going to have to do me a favour if you can. He says, what is this? There's a guy I need collecting in Donegal, and I have to get him down to Kilkenny. We have a gig on Sunday. If I can get that done, we can sell tickets and it'll sell out and it'll be a great gig. And he says, oh man, sorry, I can't do it. I'm busy. And I said, okay, fair enough, no bother. He says, who's the guy who needs collecting anyway? I says, Howard Marks. He says, I'll pay for the petrol myself. So he went up and collected him and brought him down. And the following day, he did a small gig in Thomastown, which is out the road, which is real Bohemia. Yeah. And nice place, nice people, nice vibe. Howard really liked it out there, did a small gig. And then on the way to the airport, I just said, listen, I know you got a film coming out in November, and I think we could do a good tour on the back of that. And he says, well, that's fair enough, send in your proposal, and we'll be having a meeting about it in the next week or so, and I'll see what's available, what's on the table, and I'll definitely bat for you. So I got a call within about 3 weeks and says, yeah, we're talking, and we'd like to go along with that tour. So that was brilliant, because I was able to bring Howard, obviously to all the cities, Cork, Dublin, Limerick, Galway, Waterford, but places like Athlone and Cavan and Clonmel, places like, off the beaten track. Yeah. Newry did 2 amazing gigs at Newry. And it was all set basically for November 2000 and December 2010. Mm-hmm. And he had his premiere in Dublin on the maybe October, and the following night he was on the Late Late Show, and everyone remembers that appearance on the Late Late Show, because he was with the guy who played him. Sorry,
Rhys Ifans.
Rhys Ifans, thanks, Richie. And it was a legendary. The two boys were obviously bonged off their head. And the only thing I said to Howard when I met him at the premiere, I said, Howard, listen, tomorrow night, if you can, remember to just say that you're going to be on tour. And obviously he forgot. But during the break, I went up to Tubber, and I says, listen, Howard's going to be on tour. Would you mind mentioning this? And because I was in the audience after the Late Late Show, I was so delighted to get tickets. And I says to Ryan, I says, will you mention that Howard's on tour there? And he goes, that's too much information. I said, well, just mention the website. But he, as soon as I went back up to my seat, he had thrown it into the drawer and completely disregarded it. But then the whole thing about it was that, you say no one looks at the Late Late Show, but when Howard Marks was on it, the numbers just peaked. So Howard always had a Q&A after his show, and every question was, what's the best smoke you ever had? How much should you put into a joint? And is Ryan Tubridy as big a prick as he sounds? Yeah. So that's basically the start of it all. Yeah. But if people remember 2010, I'll just finish this one, Martin. No one went anywhere. Gigs were cancelled because there was a little bit of snow. Mm-hmm. But Howard Marks, and this is the merchandise of it. This is the tour. You can see it there. A lot of dates.
Nice. Yeah, there's plenty of places. Jeez.
Like the amount of people that he met, Dublin, after the show, shaking hands, getting pictures, signing books. It was amazing. And John Geraghty from Mullingar designed the shirt. And because some of the gigs had to be cancelled because Howard had to go over back to London and Cardiff to promote the film and other stuff. Very busy guy. So we had to cancel the Limerick one, and the Cavan one was put back.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, bro.
We're getting in there on the bike. Are we being
Fucking yum.
Is that a troll or something? I was just going to say, I can't believe he played in Cavan. Jesus.
Yeah, and he stayed in Offaly. So yeah, like he literally seen the country, and he met the people, and he loved it. And he particularly liked Cork, because I think his great grandfather came from Cork, and he loved the two of the guys there, Richie and Graham, who I met through Howard, and it's great to see lads that we're still forging the lines to stay. And my good friend Steve, who were in college in Ballyfermot, who brought him over to Barcelona. So we're all very strongly connected through the great man, and we've all been inspired by him greatly. And I'm just happy. 5 years gone, but he's definitely, his legacy lives on. And
So, can I ask Johnny, when he came over here, I suppose one request I was made aware of when he came over for us, and I'll be talking about this with Graham, but did he have any other irregular requests, I suppose, like, some people when they come over, they like to have their water at a certain temperature, and they like to have all the blue M&Ms gone out of the bag or whatever. Like, did he have any funny requests? did he ask
simple,
for something?
and they all seem to get it mixed up, like, home produce.
Home produce.
Obviously, you can't ask for something that's kind of still illegal. So
Yeah.
home produce is kind of leaves it there. So, and some promoters really got it, and some of them just didn't get it at all, or care not to. But
I actually remember very specifically how it was written, because I got a writer from him because he did a gig for us in UCC, and he wrote his writer, and it had like a couple of different things in it, and then it was very cleverly written, because he didn't just say like home produce. The second last thing he wrote was a selection of lighters. He had a selection of lighters, and then the next thing it was some fresh local produce. That's exactly how it was written.
Fresh.
And it's the fact that he obviously put in the anchor point of a selection of lighters, just to really make, like, come on, really make it hit home.
What'd you need that many lighters for?
And he was very specific, 2 bottles of red wine, and in brackets, non-Californian, because he felt that he was hard done by the American justice system, and he didn't see the point in buying any of their produce, which I suppose is fair enough. If you really want to hit them hard, boycott them.
He barely touched anything else in the rider, which was hilarious. I mean, I had like beers, and I had like whiskey, and we got like Club Havana, we got like a slab or two. Man, we ended up going home. You gave it. I remember at the end, Johnny, you just said, "Lad, you just keep the beer." It's like 100 euro of alcohol.
It was organic tobacco in there as well, with the the one with the Indian on the cover. On the
American spirits.
Like organic tobacco, he wouldn't, always health conscious right to the finish. Not going to be polluting himself with any poisons in regular tobacco. And so that Indian, there's a red
Indian spirit,
American spirit.
American spirit.
There was only one place in Dublin that sold it. The tobacco shop opposite Trinity, actually. I don't know if it's still there. But didn't free of carcinogenics and that. And he was very simple in relation to the spliff as well. He liked brown, and unbelievably, he liked soap bar. He didn't see it as a drag that we did when we grown up in the 90s, and soap bar was the only thing you could get. And Howard, his favourite was Nepalese hash, but he liked brown over green anyway, and he wasn't too fussy about how it came.
He told me the time that we had him at UCC, and he asked us up to the hotel room, and I remember me and my friend were like, we had read his book over the summer, and we were so in love with him, and we were like, oh my god, we're outside, we're up at the top room of what's now the Doyle collection of the Drury's Hotel, and I remember looking down, thinking like I might see people on the way to college, and I might be able to call them and say like, look up. But at that time, I remember, because he had his own stuff, and he just came from the airport, I remember asking him, like, how did you get it? And he actually told me, he was like, look, please don't ever say this to anyone. And I think that now is a fair enough time
Yeah,
to
probably
reveal
safe.
his secret. You know, I think it's okay. Like, he's not going to get caught with it. But he told me his little trick for smuggling the brown stuff was that he molded it into the shape of a battery, and he put it into the battery slot of one of those Gillette battery razors. And he would have it in there, and he would just bring his razor and have it in there as if it was the battery, which is pretty smart, in fairness.
Yeah, it's better
Like,
than my way anyway.
The best a stoner can get.
Anytime I've gone to Amsterdam, I always I like to bring a bit of hash back. So it's probably the easiest stuff to bring back, and it's probably going to be a while now before I go there, and I might change how I bring it back now next time after saying this. But it's the only time I like to fly in jeans, and do you know, there's lots of little easy spots you can hide hash on jeans. Like I would never bring weed back. I've never really brought. I did bring weed back from Amsterdam actually, but hash, it's so much easier to smuggle because it's. You can mold it into all sorts of shapes and stick it into all sorts of places, like, and it doesn't stink like fucking weed. Weed is such a problem, man, when it stinks, like, especially if you have it on your person and you throw it a bit of heat. These people keep trying to join this bloody chat and us here this evening. But Graham, yourself and Richie, I suppose you were working with getting Howard Marks out to Cork City then when he came down, and he gave a talk in UCC, which I was present at, and he also gave a talk at the Pavilion, I believe. That right? Was it just 2 times?
I suppose myself and Richie were trying to get him for ages. Richie actually got him first before I knew Richie.
Oh, really?
So I don't know if you want to speak about that one first, Richie. That was in 2012, I think.
Yeah, I didn't realize that I didn't know you then. But now, like, 'cause you know the way memory goes, you know. But yeah, no, I suppose that's true. So I got him with the Psych Society. I had a friend in the Psych Society, and we managed to like maneuver a way so that UCC would pay for him, basically. And we brought him over to do a talk, and it was called Cannabis Science and Experience. And I actually remember my friend was like the treasurer, but then there was like the auditor of the society, and like I remember the like severe disrespect she gave because she didn't really know. And I remember like when he came in, she said, "Okay, so John Crean or whatever, this dope that is a lecturer or was a lecturer and whatever the fuck he is a dope. I know he's a dope. So I don't feel bad calling him a dope." But I remember her saying to Howard, she was like, "Yeah, so like they show like he can talk on the science and you can talk on the experience." And Howard was like, yeah, no, I'll talk on the science." You know, it was just like, oh, this girl does not know who she's talking to, you know? Because obviously,
like,
you know,
like that just shows where Marx was, like, in his mind, that even at that point. Like, I recall a year after this, when we brought him over with the UCC, as it was called, Drug Awareness and Reform Society. They wouldn't let us be called SSDP, or Students for Sensible Drug Policy.
I gotta go for 2 minutes. I'll see you in a second.
Catching a bit.
But remember this, Johnny, we were in Utopia Nation, who were the host for many of our activist meetups and various meetings throughout the years before we were an established society in UCC. As Richie rightly points out, it means to get funding and to bring over, you know, awesome speakers like Howard. But I remember discussing with him as we're rolling a hash joint on the table of Utopia, and Paul from Utopia was like delighted, like, you know, that he was here in his shop. And I said, "Oh, so so one of his other majors in Oxford was philosophy, and specifically was philosophy of science. That was my major in UCC at the time. So I was in final year, and one of the things that we were studying was a philosopher called Thomas Kuhn, an American philosopher. And immediately Howard knew the name of his most popular book, Structures of Scientific Revolution. And this can be applied like it's a paradigm shift. Everyone like is aware of this like term, this popularized paradigm shift or paradigmatic shift. This is popularized by Thomas Kuhn, or this was invented by Thomas Kuhn. And Howard could recall, this must have been like 50, 60 years prior to when he had done these studies in Oxford University, like almost verbatim. the theory, and it was just one specific book. I mean, his mind was just so witty right up until the end. I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, he was really with it. Like, you know, he was a great turn of phrase, great wit, and yeah, as I said, he could argue with anybody about anything essentially. So when he was talking about cannabis, and I remember that meeting in one of the theaters in UCC, where the guy that was debating against him was said it's like someone supporting AC/DC with an acoustic guitar trying to debate with Howard Marks on cannabis. I thought it was a great analogy. You're not gonna be heard, you know.
No, certainly not. And yeah, he was certainly a great storyteller as well. Like he really was gifted with his words and the way in which he'd articulate stuff. The event that you organised, Graham, in the pavilion, that time I think it was 2014, maybe.
It was in UCC. We actually weren't allowed to organise. The owner of the pavilion at the time didn't support the aims of the organisation.
So who organised the one in the pavilion?
He didn't believe in legal. He didn't like you have to understand. Like we were very young. We had no money. I mean, it was a surprise enough just to sell tickets enough to pay for the rider and to pay for the fee that was there. But the venue wanted more, and it was just like it was just too. So we held it in a lecture theater in UCC, and it was hilarious because the lecture theater was packed out. It was like completely, and you have no phone signal down in the basement either, which is actually great because the gig wasn't interrupted at all. It was just everyone sat obediently. Now, people were probably had some drinks or smokes beforehand. Like the place was just taken over by these hippies, you know. And we had to pay the security for overtime. So they were actually delighted to have Howard there. They knew who Howard was. They knew what to expect, and because they were getting paid to be there, they were delighted. So we were in the backstage. There's another door to lead you to the behind the podium, and Howard, we roll up one earlier on that day, and Howard takes it out, and I thought, oh God, you didn't smoke that yet? No, I thought you'd have it well smoked by now. And I said, no, I'm going to smoke it now. And just like you, Martin, he's inside. He's in UCC. He's in one of the rooms. There's no windows. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like this, I'm going to get like, what's going to happen here? And the security comes in, and I stink of hash. Now, there's some really good hash that a friend sorted us out. And he peeps his head in and he says, excuse me, Howard, would you mind smoking your cigarette just a meter away from the smoke alarm, because you're directly under it, and I just don't want any attention coming from anyone else to have to come in here if the smoke alarm comes off. Like, they were just sound to this guy, and he was really nice as well to them. It's a lot of respect all around, I think.
Yeah, he certainly did get a lot of respect as well, and it's interesting as well, given what he done over the years, and he's famous for that. Like, and I suppose really like the powers that be will continue to keep this illegal, despite the recognition that this man got for what he done. Like, show me any other criminal who can go out and write a book and be like so out there about the crime that they do, other than kind of people engaged in this kind of behaviour. It's great that Howard Marks was the man to do it, because he certainly was gifted and well able to tell that story. But I suppose outside of that, I do have, I can't remember going to the pavilion one time for an event with Howard Marks myself. I mistakenly thought it was yourself who had organised that. But on the event, on the evening in question, heading to the event, I'd rolled up a few fatties beforehand, and we were driving down the road, and the fucking cops pulled us in, and we got stopped and searched. I was in the back of the car. It was one of the other lads were driving at the time. We all got caught. I had 4 joints on me. I got caught with those. One of the other lads got caught with about maybe 25, 30 euros worth. I never forget it, actually. I met him in court afterwards and stuff, and he got like a hefty fine because he was working at the time, and because I was on the dole, I got literally the slap on the wrist, like, and I was just thinking, what a joke. But I suppose that's my story going to that event. But I'll never forget that event that evening. Howard Marks spoke about something on the stage, and it was about tobacco. He was on about how when people were traveling the world before. The Europeans, when they headed to South America, when they met the natives over there, the natives didn't very much like them, I suppose, because of some of the stuff that they done to them. But when they were leaving, the natives gave the Europeans the tobacco that we would smoke today, because the Europeans seen the locals there smoking what they thought was this tobacco, but actually no, it was a much more beneficial plant that they were consuming, and they gave us the tobacco, and we see the results of that then now on the world, because when the tobacco plant was brought back, I think it was like Nicotiana rustica or something like that, it was only for the elites, the upper classes, like, and really like that was kind of like the natives' way of getting back at us for what happened over there at the time. That's always a story that'll stand, or I'll remember anyway, from himself and those evenings.
Yeah, the concert in UCC, or the gig in UCC, and it was like really thanks to Johnny as well for putting it together. Like, he had reached out to one of our Facebook pages, actually. Funnily enough, we were organized on Facebook at the time. Wouldn't recommend doing that nowadays, but between Utopia Nation and Facebook, we had this group and we just met up. But Johnny got in touch, and what we were actually able to do was to get a medical patient, Irua Fitzgerald, from CUH. He came from the CUH with literally the drip in his arm. He was a very late stage cancer at that point, and that was I think like probably his last, definitely within the last 12 months of his life. And that video actually is available online. It's on YouTube, and it's the most viewed Arua video that he has. And he was a very talented comic. So to put that together was just really, really important. And for there was over 300 people there. We did €5 tickets, 2 for $5. It was the deal of the century, really, thinking back. We've raffled off a book, and afterwards some, different signature autographs. He did some book signings. It was really, really such a good night. Like,
Stephen, yourself, you got to partner with Howard Marks as he done a tour over in Barcelona. Is that right?
Absolutely. And well, again, it was Johnny. Johnny was moving him around Ireland at the time. And I don't know if you can throw your minds back to 2011. But 2011 was a pretty tumultuous year, as it's the year of when Spain went into the Indignados, when every square in Spain was, they're called the Indignados. It means the angry. And you have the party Podemos that's still around, kind of came out of that movement. But it's the Occupy movement, basically, which was all happening at the same time in 2011. So, so I said, look, it'd be amazing. And I had kind of got in touch with a couple of people that had been knocking around the social clubs were not actually happening at the time, as to my awareness. And I would have been pretty aware, but you were just kind of, people just sorted you out, and you never thought too much about it. And we could grow. I could always grow in Barcelona. And but then 2000, when we did that show, so I put him on. He came on the same. So it was obvious. The obvious thing to do with him was to put him on the same weekend as Spanibus. And so Spanibus is the biggest fair in the world, essentially, and in this part of the world, at least, And so we did it on that weekend, and he had Shanti Baba was kind of his tour manager on that trip, was Shanti Baba. And Shanti Baba, as everybody should know, is one of the world's great geneticists. He's responsible. He's won cannabis cups all over the place. Northern White Widow, Northern Haze, all the hazes are down to Shanti Baba's genetics. He owns, and Shanti runs Mr. Nice Seeds. So when at that time, that was what they were hooking up together. Nice. Shanti was hooking up with Mr. Nice, Howard, and on that weekend of Spanibus. So that's when that thing happened. And so when just the way the dates worked out, and I said, Johnny, okay, man, that's mad, because Spanibus is that weekend. I said, man, we got to do this. And I was running a comedy. I've been running comedy in the city here since comedy club called the Giggling Geary since 2005. And so I said, okay, look, let's put that on. So I got a venue. Really, it was all last minute, all very, very last minute. I got a venue at about 100, I think about 200, maybe about 180 seats or something like that. And it's the fastest selling show I ever put out. And literally we sold the entire place out in about an hour. And it was like, because it was leaked. I kind of leaked it out to people, and then boom, 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 place sold out. So there was great excitement, and it was on the first round of Mr. Nice show, you know. So it was that show, Johnny. You could possibly clear this up because I forget the title of that first show that he came with.
Scholar.
No, it's the one
Scribe.
before. The one before that was really the Mr. Nice.
Yeah,
show.
just an audience with Mr. Nice.
There you go. That's what it was. So that show, an audience with Mr. Nice, and he did the Q&A afterwards and all of that kind of thing. So like the venue wouldn't be your first choice venue, but there was at the time Europe's biggest television. It's like, I don't know, maybe 60. When TVs weren't that big, we had this massive TV because it was a very audiovisual show. So it was perfect for that, you know. And so we got that out. And then after the show, so Shanti Baba, we were kind of doing the sound check and all that before with Shanti Baba and Howard, and there was just the two of them. And then afterwards, then kind of Shanti was his tour manager effectively, and so Shanti said, "Yeah, we've got an after party." And I said, "Yeah," and I said, well, "Okay, what?" And he said, "Yeah, it's the inauguration of one of the very first, to me, it was absolutely the first cannabis social club in Barcelona. They'd been rumored, but I hadn't actually kind of been to one, seen one. And then this was, but tonight we were going to the after party of this show was going to be the inauguration of the Resin Club is the name of it. And it would have been one of the first. It's not the first, but it would certainly be one of the first. And it was a big one, man. It's like and so Howard was put in as socio number 1. I think I got in around number 6 or something like that. But it was a mad night, man. It was like, because the entire Spanibus is the industry, and it's going to be happening this October. And I'm going to try and get people to come out here and to experience. This is the entire industry in Barcelona, in a little place, Cornellà. They go outside of town to do it. And but so they were all at this one tiny, and it's like a subterranean kind of venue. And so we rocked into that, and like, it was something to be kind of rocking in with, you know, the absolute celebrity in the cannabis celebrity of the world, and Shanti Baba. And Shanti Baba, would think he was after winning. Did he win a cannabis cup that year? You know, but he was at like that. Shanti was really live. What was happening with him and Mr. Nice Seeds, that deal was done and all that kind of thing. So it was an amazing night. And to me, I was kind of like with Howard, and Howard was puffing away, man. And he was, at the time, I remembered him to be 65. I don't know if that's correct, but I always remember that figure. And I was kind of going, and I had another girl, Stephanie Figuera, very funny lady. She does a bit of comedy every now and again. Really, really funny girl. And she's from Canada, and she's a big time smoker. And so Steph came in as well, and she's puffing away, and we're all puffing away. And next thing, Howard is just in a groove, you know. But myself and Steph, are totally destroyed. And but it was so funny because everywhere you turned, you know, because I was kind of, everywhere you turned was industry professional. So you had, like, if I turn to my right, it's a journalist from High Times. If I turn to my left, it's the guy with a massive seed bank. If I turn to my other, the entire place was the celebrity of the. I guess it's like, I don't know, what would it be like? Some kind of celebrity bash, you know what I mean?
Of the cannabis world. In
cannabis terms.
all the cannabis celebrities for us anyway.
So I was kind of giving it that, look, it's, you know, Howard, basically, guys, you know, Howard brought it in. I smoked it. That was kind of our deal, myself and Howard, and he did that all through the years. Like you said, the hash, the brown, the rocky, for years and years. I mean, so much of the stuff that we in Ireland we had nothing to go to if we didn't have that man bringing the gear in.
Like,
and that's testament to him.
do you have any idea of how much he actually would have moved over his years? I've no idea of how much, but did he ever allude to it maybe in one of his books? I know you've read a lot more than me anyway. I've only watched his movie.
So I know that like obviously it would have been a lot of years since I would have looked at this, but I do remember very clearly from stuff I researched before that it was claimed anyway that at one point he controlled about an eighth of the world's weed and hash supply, which must be quite an insane amount.
Whoa.
Quite a
And
lot.
I'm obviously sorry as well that I had to bowl for a little bit there. But there, because actually, like, there's quite a lot that has come to my mind that I would like to like express through this, because I have so much. When I look back to, like, let's say the time of my life when this was happening as well, I've so much kind of like I just listened to like the Tommy Tiernan podcast this week, and he mentioned like a Bob Dylan lyric in his podcast, and he was the lyric was, "I have nothing but affection for all those who sailed with me." And Tommy in the podcast was saying that it's very important to kind of express to people how much you, like, let's say, have affection for them and stuff. And how Tommy was saying it was that Tommy was saying that there's so many people, let's say, that have been and gone that he didn't get the chance to do that with. And he said that a lot of people don't do that with their family or whatever. And in the podcast, he said, "You may think this now, or you felt bad that you didn't express this to people who are gone." He goes, "But you probably live with people that you haven't expressed this to yet, and just make sure that you do,
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that, like, as I do look back on this, particularly with like Graham and stuff and the stuff we did together, that period of my life was a really great period, and I thought we had great buzz and we did some great stuff, and literally nothing but affection for those who sailed with me, and obviously Johnny as well, and the stuff that we did. But like 1,000,000% Grams, like, and like, but like with the Howard stuff, like, there's a couple of things that, because I looked over some stuff today about, like, just the thing with Howard, and it's quite, like, the interesting thing is that actually there was kind of, let's say, two prongs of how I met Howard, in that like, so the first was that I was reading his book on holidays with my friends, and this would have been before, let's say, I would have met Graham, and it was actually my friend's mother had seen him on the Late Late. At the time I had seen him too, but my friend's mother had seen him and knew how me and my friend were. I don't want to name his name because I know that the subject is around consumption of drugs and stuff, and he may not appreciate that. But his mother basically was, realized that this is someone that we would probably be very into, and because of her suggestion, we read his book. And I remember on our holiday, we had one copy of his book, and I would read the first 2 chapters, and then I would tear it out and hand it to my friend, and then I'd be reading some more of it or whatever. And we then, like, we organized that, like, Psych Society gig with Howard, and he came over for that, and that was an amazing experience. We got to smoke with him, and that was a fun thing. And there's one more thing about the smoking with him thing, just a little thing I want to mention, just a little, let's say, intricacy of Howard, which was that when we were smoking with him, and he had his rolled hash joint, just because he was such a nice guy, he had to kind of explain everything. And he starts lighting it and he's smoking it, and he goes, "Look, I'm going to smoke a lot of this first, and it's not because I'm selfish, it's because I need it." And he took like 10 puffs and then he handed it around, and that was that thing. But then, like, my first comedy gig was actually with Howard, and it's because it was a time before I realized I wanted to be a comedian, and this gig is actually what made me realize I wanted to be a comedian. But it actually was separate to this. It was months later, and it was actually an Erua Fitzgerald, who, again, a guy I idolized and I'm sure all of us love. Erua did a gig in UCC, and after the gig there was like a session at my house, which Johnny came to, because Johnny did a little set at that gig, and I didn't know at this point was actually Howard Marks' manager. And there was just a session in my house, and I played a song, Cannabis Tree, which was just a parody song I had written. I had only written 2 comedy songs at the time, which was that and another one called Pussy Whip Bouncer. And I played Cannabis Tree, which mentions Howard Marks in it. It mentions his late show appearance. And after I played that at the gig, Johnny says, he goes, I'm actually Howard Marks's Irish tour manager, and do you wanna play with him tomorrow night in the pavilion?
What are the chances?
Which ended up becoming my first ever comedy gig. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was obviously an amazing experience. And I remember, like, I played that gig, and then he asked me if I want to, like, play around the country with him, which I obviously accepted, but I couldn't even play all of them. This wasn't immediately after. It was a couple of months after he asked if I wanted to play the other couple of gigs. And I could play a couple of them, but I remember I couldn't play the Dublin gig because it was the day I was moving to Amsterdam. And I remember I moved to Amsterdam, and I was about a year in Amsterdam thinking about those Howard Marks gigs. And at those Howard Marks gigs, I played Cannabis Tree, I played Pussy Whip Bouncer, and then I played a cover, which as a stand-up comedian it showed how little I kind of, let's say, knew about, like, let's say, the stand-up scene, is that you would never cover someone else's material, like, as a comedian, you know? Mm-hmm. But the song was a Stephen Lynch song about smuggling drugs, so it was, like, very perfect for the Howard Marks audience. So, like, I played that cover, and I did announce that it was a cover. And then I played, like, just Ben Harper's Burn One Down, which is obviously just a kind of a righteous cannabis movement song. And I remember, because those were, like, gigs with, like, a big crowd. And I remember for, like, a year I was thinking in Amsterdam, I was like, they went well, you know? I was like, they actually went well. Like, as I see myself as a comedian now, I'm like, I just played songs. I didn't, like, do much talking or comedy in between at all. I was just like, this is song 1, this is song 2, this is song 3. But as I was in Amsterdam, I was thinking for about a year about it, and it was that gig that, like, or those gigs that made me realize, I was like, and especially too because I had known Erua, and I did genuinely, even though he was younger than me, I actually idolized Erua because he was a guy that was like a beam of light when anyone came into a room, and I could see that, and I was like, how is this guy so, let's say, amazing, you know? And then it was as I was in Amsterdam, and I was thinking, okay, like, the songs went well to a big crowd. Maybe if I start doing, like, stand-up, I could, like, mix in doing these songs and, like, integrate everything better and smoother and, like, be a stand-up around it. And all of those things are what came together to me actually being a stand-up comedian. So I really do owe Howard that. I owe Johnny that for giving me the opportunity at that gig massively. And obviously just generally the community that, you know, the Cannabis Tree song was just something I wrote out of, I suppose, frustration at the Irish cannabis law situation, which came about the cannabis activism that we did, you know. So I apologize for, like, the long monologue there, but all those things are things that I really wanted to get out. Yeah. You know, on this, because I felt that they were all important.
So anybody out there listening now wanting to take away from this is you should all get involved in drug smuggling or hash smuggling anyway, because look at the benefits you can bring to somebody's life by smuggling some hash.
But that was it, like, you know, Howard was he was very upfront in relation to what he wanted from the tour, to see places that he hadn't been before, because, you know, the tour circuit is the cities, that's it. So, like, you know, the Roisin Dove in Galway was a great venue. The guys down there really sound, Kevin Healy. And, you know, we were able to kind of go to places where, on the beaten track. But, like, I'm a shit kick promoter, like. Yeah. I just had the idea, you know, an element of promotion is luck. But you can only get so far with luck, you know, you have to make the right connections. And Howard could have went with any promoter in the country, like, you know, but he took a bet on me. And if you read his book, Mr. Nice, that's all he did all through his life. He met with people, and he got a vibe from them, and that's how he lived.
Rightly so.
And that's how he did it. Well, back in the day, there was Stoner's Code and all that kind of thing, which is really important.
But Johnny, you were a networking machine, man. You were a networking machine. I mean, you just made it your business to meet everybody, and it is through forging those relationships and those connections that takes hard work, and it takes sacrifice, and it takes commitment.
But it was extremely important, Graham. It was extremely important to make the right connections, because we were going to legalize cannabis, and when we came down and met G guys in Cork, the SSDP, maybe it's the Cork kind of attitude that's always been present. Like, it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of how, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. Like, and that kind of that was infectious for Howard, and he really warmed to that kind of attitude, because that's what he did when he got out of prison after serving I think 7 years of a 25 sentence.
I think he served 9 years of a 25-year sentence.
Yeah. Like, the first thing he did was got on 2 tickets, one in Norwich and one in I think outside Kent, London or something, to run on the cannabis ticket. They just straight out of prison. That's how much he believed in cannabis. We endeavored to give Ming a platform during the election, and he wasn't in a position to take it in that loan. But Howard really understood how important the cannabis thing was, and he understood that we're not criminals, and everyone kind of warmed to him. Walking down the street, is that himself, and he loved the turn of phrase of Irish people, because they'd recognize him, but they'd stay away from him unless they wanted to come up and give him the bacons, which he always was grateful for. But he loved the whole idea, and we have to. I'm very good at kicking the whole Irish psyche and us as a people in relation to not standing up for fuck all. But I think we know exactly what we believe in, and it's just a matter of how we do it. And the amount of people that were able to gravitate towards what he believed in said an awful lot to me in relation to so many people love cannabis in this country. So many people smoke it. I used to have to introduce them every night. So the only thing I could think of as introducing them was Howard Marks, an audacious cannabis smuggler, brought copious tons of cannabis through Shannon and Cork Harbour and Dublin Airport and Larne and Belfast, Northern Ireland, and 1 in 4 people would have smoked some of his cannabis in the 70s or 80s. So if you were born in the 90s, your mother or father was probably smoking some of Howard Marks's cannabis. 1 in 4 smoked it, and 1 in 3 lie about it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But the Willie Welsh Wizard of Word, Howard Marks, and that was it. And he put on a great show, and as I said, the affection that was shown to him by people up and down the country made me just totally believe that it's only a matter of time. And Howard used to say that the green grass of home was a song that Tom Jones had about Wales, but he says grass was made for Ireland. And the way the Irish are so patriotic about Guinness, why can't they be so patriotic about cannabis and love the growers, love the dealers, because he understood exactly what they had to do in order to get it out there. The ones that weren't there to capitalize, but just to cover their costs. He really had an awful lot of respect for them people. And I suppose that DS turned up at his shows. Gardaí turned up at their shows.
Tell me about that. Did that actually ever amount to anything?
You probably obviously know about the whole, Gay Byrne late show. The time he was on the Gay Byrne late show, and it was like a little bit of a setup, effectively. And I actually have a quite an amazing quote that Howard said to me and my friend when we were driving him from Cork Airport to the Joyce Hotel. This is definitely something that has not been out there yet, that he said, because we asked him about the Gay Byrne late show and the next late show with Ryan Tubridy, and so I don't know if you know, just to give it context, what happened with the Gay Byrne late show was he was brought out on the show, and then he was asked by Gay Byrne, does he have stuff on him? And he kind of said, like, well, like I always do. But obviously Howard didn't know that they had Gardaí backstage that then were searching backstage, and basically, I don't know, because obviously I realize this is going out live to people, But there is someone that is in an academic position, like in a pretty strong position that was on with him, that actually hid his stuff for him backstage,
Nice.
which I thought took incredible integrity to do that, you know. So that, you know, he basically got away with it then. But I remember asking him on that car ride about Gay Byrne and Ryan Tubridy, and Howard came out with like an amazing quip, like, as in, this is exactly what Howard said. He goes, "Look, Gay Byrne and Ryan Tubridy, they're both cunts, but at least Gay Byrne was an educated cunt."
That's right. Anyway,
but that shows.
I didn't say that. That's what Howard said. I'm like, I mean, because I realize it's an extremely, like, I realize the thing of saying that, like, but like, I'm just quoting what he said, basically. Yeah. You know, and that is, I can, you know, true as my heart is, that's absolutely what he said.
Jeez.
So he had a respect for. I suppose he did have a respect for, let's say, Gay Byrne's intelligence, but he probably realised that Gay Byrne was part of a system at the time that allowed this to happen to him, which was, again, it's just a massive lack of integrity, really, to bring someone on a show and to do that to him. You know, and it's lucky that there was someone backstage that actually had integrity that day. You know what I mean? And Howard also told me about running. I asked him about when he was running on the issue of cannabis, and he said, he goes, look, I was never running to get in. I knew I was never in a position to get in, and he goes, I wouldn't want to be surrounded by those cunts. He said, I was running because I knew that it would bring attention to the issue of cannabis regulation.
Man, I think me and Howard share something similar there anyway, because that's pretty much the exact same reason I ran. Like, it was never an intention to get voted in. It was to bring attention to the message, the message for the need to end this cannabis prohibition, to end all of this injustice that's going on around this Misuse of Drugs Act. So, man, I actually... I didn't realise that he got set up like that in the Gay Byrne show either. So that was news to me there. So nice one for sharing that with me.
There was actually on that show. Sorry to cut across you. Bigger pardon, Martin. Sorry.
No, go on, jump in, Paddy.
Just on that show, because that's not really online. Obviously, there's a lot of the Tubridy interview is easily found on YouTube and that. But that one with the Gay Byrne, it actually uses a clip in his montage within the show. But there was Mary Harney as a young what party was she with? The PDs, wasn't it?
She's probably with them all, the size of her. Oh, jeez,
but she came on after. She came on after Howard Marks on that Gay Byrne infamous night, and she says, "I'm not sure about Mr. Nice, more Mr. Nasty." You know, Mary Harney. Listen, we don't need to talk about Mary Harney. Her legacy precedes it. So that's what she was at, you know. And Howard Marks, the character, and that's what he was. So when Howard, I just one or two things to catch up on that. I feel that to show the character of Howard, and I don't want to be hogging this interview because I know that everyone wants to get back in. So, but just one or two things. Yeah, when we went from Kilkenny was his first gig on the 2010 tour, and as I said, we're in the middle of a snowstorm, but like not a snowstorm that would be in Canada or somewhere else. In Ireland, you know, everything closes down. But tours did stop. Gigs were cancelled. But I had a trusted Fiesta. I wasn't into the American car or Ford Fiesta, yeah. So, but he reluctantly hopped in. Actually, I got a hired car to go from Kilkenny to Cork, but it was too much responsibility, and we had we dropped it back off in Dublin, and he did two interviews, one with Matt Cooper. And Matt Cooper was a little bit snotty as well on Today FM, I have to say, as a guest, and he did the same with John Sinclair. He was very rude. These were guests that came into his show, and he just treated them like, you know, criminals. Now, I suppose they were criminals in a way. Let's not ignore the fact that they were dealing in illegal substances. But, there's an element of respect that you have to pay, because Howard wasn't also a writer or a drug smuggler, cannabis smuggler. He was also a travel writer. He was also a restaurant reviewer. And he says one of the best meals he ever had is in Cork. What do you call that place there? The street that goes up on Patrick Street. The Ivy? It's not the Ivy.
Oh, the Bordeaux. Is that the Bordeaux? The Chateau, is it? No.
No. First of all, what's the street?
Is it on Patrick Street, like?
Up the hill.
Yeah.
No,
McCurtain Street? What?
Street.
It's McCurtain Street, yeah. McCurtain Street.
You go Patrick Street onto McCurtain Street, maybe?
Yeah.
Across the
so
bridge.
there's a restaurant there of note. But yeah, he thought it was one of the best meals he ever had. Of course, it helped with the chef being a massive fan too. But so what I'm saying is that Howard was able to write about anything, and he was able to meet with anyone, and discuss with anybody. Like when we were up in Belfast and where was it, Newry, and Richie, you were there for the Derry and Donegal gigs a few years after that. But the people that were coming to see his shows, they weren't loyalists, nationalists, Catholic, Protestant. They were cannabis heads, and a lot of them were very young guys. And we're talking about 2010, 2011. So they grew up with the not knowing rioting, not knowing trouble. And it was someone like Howard Marks that was able to bring them together, to share spliffs, to talk about cannabis. And I seen it again when John Sinclair did a tour with him in 2014. That he really brought these. There was no divide. Do you understand? So what's happening in Belfast tonight is terrible, and it will break his heart to see how the peace accord had developed, and out of frustration. And obviously there's elements to that, and it's not cut and dried either. But we did talk about this idea in relation to a joint operation to keep the peace accord going. Just around 2013. 2 years before he passed, and because I was emailing him, I said the tour, we had got these few dates and blah blah blah, and we have a gig up in Derry, and he never played Derry, so he was interested in that. And I says there's a few guys with Northern Ireland Cannabis Club that can really motivate or really get the word out about an idea that I was thinking, a cross-border joint operation in relation to passing joints and bongs across the border, whether it be in Newry or Monaghan or Fermanagh, somewhere, the location to be sussed out, and literally call it the pipes of peace.
Pipes.
And how? Yes, absolutely. Let's do it. So he was up for anything. That was my point. And look at this T-shirt, I have to check it out. He was wearing this one night. This is made of 100% cannabis from a friend of his I think in New York. And I said to him, says, Howard, that's a really cool shirt. I says, where can I get one? And he literally took it off him. He was in a hotel room. And I said, oh, Howard,
The man gave the shirt off his back.
There you go. So he literally took the shirt off his back and gave it to me. That was the kind of guy. The final one, Richie, while I remember, and I stopped in after that. When we're in Dublin, after doing the two interviews with Matt Cooper, and Sean Moncrief, has to be said, on Newstalk, knew him and gave him a great interview, and it was brilliant. And Matt Cooper was just looking for an angle, and he really pissed me off because he had Howard's daughter Amber, who's a barrister, and he didn't show her the respect that she deserved either as a guest. But so then, in the middle of all that, we had to go down to Killarney from Dublin. And as I said, it was snowing. So I was thinking, Howard, we might have to get a plane from Dublin to Killarney, which I love the idea of. Because, the snow was that bad, even though it was probably only a few inches, but, just to make it easier on ourselves. And I said, and we're going over Halfpenny Bridge in Dublin to get our rider for the road. And then I remember it very clearly. I says, Howard, I don't want to stress you out. And he goes, whoa, I don't do stress. And I thought it was one of the most beautiful things I ever heard in my life. I don't do stress. Stress is there. It's not going to affect me because I don't do it. And I'm going, yeah, it's just, I just go, and that was him. in relation to all the borders you had to go over, and he loved the idea of going onto a stage because it was the same rush as going across a border. The small things. He always had that little bit of devilment about him.
Yeah.
But when he said, "I don't do stress," and that's an amazing thing, because if you think about it, if you, I know it's probably easier said than done, but the way he said it and the way he defined stress, that if you don't let it in, you might be able to deal with it in some kind of way. But
we had an incident in Madrid on that vein. The following year, 2012, I brought him out twice. So we did 2011, just Barcelona and the whole Spanibus thing and all that. And then the following year, we brought him back in 2012. We did Madrid and Barcelona. And Madrid was a funny gig, because it was in a kind of a pretty good theater. He used to use the whole time, but he had that audiovisual show that he really wanted to get out, and that was the show. And but the fucking video player messed up, and we suddenly found ourselves at last minute. And if you've ever been in comedy shows or working in any kind of production, it's a disaster when technically you have a complete breakdown. And this was ostensibly a complete breakdown of the show. So we're kind of backstage, and I'm panicking, and have all the sound techs, the techs around the theater were all racing and killing themselves trying to get this projector to work, and wasn't happening. Went on all the time, and exactly like that, what Johnny's describing there. He said, I'm not going to do his accent, but he didn't do stress.
I don't do stress.
There you go.
I don't do stress.
And it was exactly like that. Yeah. And I was going, wow. And because I was stressing, because we had sold pretty well in Madrid on that night, not as well as hoped, but then we still had to get a show out, and that's the most important. I think it's a very important thing to say about him, that he was. It's kind of lost sometimes that he actually, when he did get up and go to the line, go to the microphone, he was very serious about it. He was very serious that he had to deliver for the people. And so what we had in the end was we had no projector. So it was like 9 out of 10 comics. I've worked with tons of big comics. You mentioned, but it's like they'd walk off the stage if the projectors let them down, and their entire show is an audiovisual show. And so, but he didn't. And I said, well, what can we do, man? And he said, and this is what he did, and this is amazing what he did. So he said, I've got a few I said, I've got something for this if it ever happens. So what I'm saying is, he was a total professional performer. And in terms of people performing, I've worked with every kind of performer. And what he did that night was amazing, because he kind of said, no, I said, don't worry, man, I've got something in the bag that I can, we have to give them a show. But he was really determined that a show had to go out, that they'd come to see Howard Marks. So he went out and he did his poetry and stuff, and he did a few readings from Dylan Thomas, but told stories to the audience. The audience got what they came from. At the end, the audience were, for a while, there was a kind of disappointment in the room that they weren't going to get the show. They weren't going to see all the stuff from the 60s, the 70s, all those kinds of footage that he had from those times. But now what they were getting was a very, very authentic show, which was Howard Marks, who was practically ad-libbing, and he delivered it, man. And I never think that's an incredible testament to him, that he was more than people don't recognize that about him. He was actually quite a professional dude to get the show out. And then the next day we go to Barcelona. It's one of the beauties about my job, when you get a person like Howard, that you get to kind of spend the journey going from between these two great cities. And so the next day we're going off to Barcelona, and we have everything working, and it's and then the show gets out perfect. And so he was an extraordinary guy, and he had a lot in his bag. He was prepared. Do you know what I mean?
It's crazy to think what the world would have been robbed of if he was actually to be locked up for the entire extent of that 25 years, was it? Like, imagine he never got out to meet Ali and to do all this. Like, so Richie, jump away on in there, Richie.
So like,
and to meet his family as well,
As Johnny was talking, it was like, I was like one tangent, two tangents, and then even as he finished, it was like, there's a third tangent, and now there's a fourth with what Stephen said. So there's a few things I'll try to get from what people were saying. So like, when I was touring with him, it actually was the first time that I actually went to the north. And which actually I didn't, I definitely didn't realize it at the time. I suppose being from Cork and being so far removed from the troubles, which weren't, let's say, troubles throughout our life that much. Obviously they were when we were 8 or 9, but we didn't realize it. And obviously then you go to the north and you see it or whatever. And it was something. And I do remember, I don't know if Johnny will remember this, but the three of us were walking to a bar. I think it was called the Eagle, and we couldn't find it. And I had walked on a little bit ahead. And this was my first experience of, let's say, the north-south divide. In that I just went up to a guy and I was like, "Oh, sorry, do you know where the Eagle is?" And like he just goes, "Good fucking luck to you." And and I actually still being the let's say like didn't even realize, and I just thought he didn't understand me, and I was like, no, sorry, I'm just looking. Do you know where the Eagle pub is? And he's just like, "God fucking luck to you," and walks off. And I remember just looking back, and Howard's laughing, and Howard goes, "Richie, I'd say he heard your southern accent there." So like that was one thing. And another thing I remember, because you were talking about him like healing that divide or whatever, I remember in the dressing room of the Derry gig, it's actually my WhatsApp photo, and I haven't replaced it because I don't have the photo anywhere else, so I only have this photo of me and Howard, which is my WhatsApp photo.
I think
but I remember that in the dressing room afterwards, some of the fans or whatever had realized that it was, and they started knocking on the window, and Howard opened the window and got them to like climb in and like started, and it was just like such an utter gentleman who always gave everyone the time of day. You know what I mean? And he really, really did.
Legend.
And just what you're talking about with the no stress, Johnny, and this is an actual tangent from Howard Marks, but when you said that thing about the no stress, it's something I find with one of my best friends in Amsterdam was from Tahiti, and like if you've met Tahitian people, it's quite an insane experience about how they are the nicest people ever, and they seem to not have stress. And me and my friends group thought that this was just something we experienced with this one particular guy, Aram, that we knew. And then I remember one of his friends visited Amsterdam when Aram was gone, and I had to show him around. And I remember a Dutch guy basically was like walking past us, and he says, "Do you have a lighter?" And the Dutch guy kind of looks at him and he's just like, "No," like that, and walks away. And the Tahitian dude looks at me, very calmly looks at me and goes, "He has too much stress. He has too much stress." And like what will like solidify this is about a year later I watched a documentary called "Listen to Me, Marlon" about Marlon Brando, and I was shocked when the documentary took a turn and it started talking about it. Just goes, and then Marlon went to Tahiti to like film a movie, and it talked about, Marlon basically talked about how he went to Tahiti and he'd never met people that had been like Tahitians, and he literally said their faces are so unmanaged by stress, they just don't let this in, they live a different life. And Marlon said that he was afraid that they would be infiltrated by the white man, and that like their lifestyle would change, let's say. But basically, as you said, that just reminded me completely of the Tahitian people. And then on the very last tangent in what Stephen said, which was about him being this utter professional, that's exactly what it was like with the UCC gig, because he came in that day, he thought it was going to be a different deal. Then he found out that it was this science and experience thing, and he says, "Okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write my speech." And that night he delivered his science and experience speech, which he had just sat down and wrote that day, and it was absolutely magnificent. You know what I mean? So I'm sorry again that was 4 different tangent points I had to get to. But,
Tahiti. What the hell, Tahiti?
Have you ever been? Honestly, I haven't been, but it's a place that I think
must be an island thing. We wouldn't know because we're not an island. We're two countries, right?
No, it's funny you say that because in my friends group in Amsterdam, there was me and Aram, and there's a Swedish guy, an Italian guy, a Dutch guy, a French guy, and we have group arguments every now and again. And what made me feel great was like one time we had an argument, and it was like me and Aram were on one side against the rest, and Aram like looked at me and he goes, "They don't understand because they aren't island boys like us." And I was just like, "Yeah, we are an island." You know what I mean?
But it's true, if the white man didn't come into Ireland, on his horse and his staple, we might be a different country, and it just goes to show like what cannabis can do for PTSD. I think that could be a very interesting thing if we do legalize it for the north and south, for these generation that are before us to kind of get over some deep trauma.
But Howard understood Ireland. He understood the history of Ireland. And he understood the history of Northern Ireland.
Quite serious characters from Northern Ireland, make no mistake. And so he was very, very aware. And even when he came out to Spain, we had a character out here, Dominic McCann. And Dominic's quite a character. Like you said, Donny, everybody's a characters around that. And I remember saying, I remember going to Howard. I says, "Look at man, do you think are you cool with McCanns?" And he said, "Oh yeah, come on, Peter, great friend." So he's absolutely. I couldn't get over while I was worried about possible angst there, but he didn't have it, and everything. Everybody is cool with Howard. It's an incredible energy that radiates off him, where he doesn't do stress, and not even Northern Ireland's troubles were complicated enough to.
It was contagious.
To knock him off his kilter, and he knew a lot of serious people, so he had very good experience, or very good knowledge of what the Northern Ireland and what the Irish situation is. Like you said, Johnny, he knows Ireland well.
But within that context as well, Steve, he was able to say like, you actually have control of that. It's a small country, it's a small island. You have your own republic within that island, and that has its own problems. But you're a young country, and he knew that. He was able to tell me that Ireland had the youngest population under 25 in Europe. Howard Marks was able to tell me that. He says, "This is your country. You can actually make this change." And he would have mentioned Richie and Graham in relation to his experience in Cork when we're on the road. Them guys are where it's at. And that's why, that the connections have been made, and we're still having a conversation 10 years on, and it was Howard Marks that brought us together. So Howard was very kind of influential, and Rira supported him in a Dublin gig. Jinx Lennon supported him in a few gigs. Richie Mooney, he really wanted the locals to, because he set up a record label as well. He was audacious in everything he did. Business, he obviously had to be one step ahead in relation to his 43 aliases, but he had to think quick. And he was able to think all the time, smoking, and always on the run, and always making connections. And he never stopped making connections. And I think he gave up a lot, and his family suffered for years. But when he was on the road with me, family was paramount. He was talking to his son Patrick nearly every day. His daughters, he was talking to them as well, and his partner in Leeds, and talking in the lovely Welsh twang that he had while he was on the phone and smoking hash, looking out the window at Ireland, and just observing everything and saying it back to me and asking me questions. What's that? He had a real interest in Ireland. And as I said, his great-great-grandfather, I think, was a cobbler from Cork who went to Wales. I don't know, at the turn of last century. But he understood where Ireland could take the lead, and he seen Ming as a key guy in that, who was a politician. And I think he'd be a bit dismayed that we haven't progressed so much. But something like Martin's World, 3 days a week, getting the good word out, he'd definitely be endorsing that if he wasn't contributing himself. But he was also a contributor with Loaded magazine, don't forget, which was one of the big magazines of the 90s. And he did what you did today, Martin. The big move of bringing the movement to the streets. So he'd go down with hash cookies into the police station in Hammersmith where he lived. for a while. And there you go. I'm Howard Marks, and they'll be there. Fuck off, Howard. We're not going to give you any attention
Again.
So they literally kicked him out. But they knew that by going into the Garda station or the police station that this is ludicrous. You know what's ludicrous? I'm going to show you how ludicrous this law is and highlight it.
Yeah.
And by Martin doing the big thing today that's there on the page, Howard would recommend that 100%. And in order for us to legalize cannabis in our lifetime, in the short term, all it needs is one big push. And everybody, as Steve said in the show with the ladies from Barcelona the other night, everyone needs to come out of the cannabis closet. And Howard Marks made that possible for everyone to be accepted. If it was only in one venue in the PAV or up in a venue in Cavan or in a small bar in Athlone,
and no one
where
showed up,
where the Garda station was right across the road from the venue in Athlone, and the manager came up to me and says, would it be all right if two guards come in? I said, what do you mean? He says, oh no, they'll pay. Like I said, all right, we can put them on the guest list if you want, like, you know. But you know what I mean? Like, so it was like it's amazing. It's amazing back then, looking back, and I think without Martin's word, and I don't mean this just because you're here, but like that seems to be the only thing that's kind of going at the moment. It is disjointed. The movement, it was going places. Olaf Tarrison was a big pusher, and he ran in '97. Ming kept it going. Now Gino's bringing a bill in, but it has to have its purpose now, and we have to keep moving forward with intent, because
on Monday you have the politicians finally having to face a few questions, and that'll
be very interesting
for the SSDP. So it's happening, Johnny. This stuff is Martin's doing his thing all the time. It's 3 times a week. 420 News is out there. There's a round tables being formed. There's a lot of stuff kind of happening in the background. I think COVID is keeping us sheltered, but I think that when we come, I can see how much of a community there is out there now.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a uniting of the community at the moment now as well. Like, we are certainly coming together a lot more around the movement of cannabis.
You know, there's 1 in 5 people in Ireland are smokers. The EU recognizes that. So do your UB40 1 in 5.
1 in 10.
No,
1 in 10.
Like that definitely is true. Can I just, in case I forget it before this ends, can I give you a fun fact about Howard that I think some people might not know, because this came up in just a backstage chat after one of the gigs, and we were talking about 6 degrees of separation, and Howard was basically telling me different degrees of separation that he was from different people. You know, which would mean I would then be, let's say, 1 more. But one of the most insane ones was, did you know that Howard Marks taught English in a jailhouse exam to Biggie Smalls?
To Biggie Smalls?
Yeah.
No way. That's crazy.
So Howard
in prison, right, in the US.
Yeah, so Christopher Wallace was 19 and he was in for like dealing smack, and Howard didn't know him as a rapper. He never heard him rap, and Howard didn't realize who he was until he died, because he said that he taught this guy, and he said he knew him. He's like, I knew Christopher Wallace. He goes, he was actually one of the best students. He goes, he was like really cared, like, and you know, he taught him English for a jailhouse exam, and it obviously makes sense. Biggie being a rapper, that he would care, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Howard said that his son was a massive fan of Biggie, and it was only when he died, and then, like, you know, he just saw the tributes, and he saw it came up at the end of a video, like, Christopher Wallace with the name, and then he said it just hit him. He was like, wait, Christopher Wallace? And then he made sure, and he's like, yeah, that's Christopher Wallace. And it is, if you look it up, they were in Terre Haute Penitentiary at the same time.
Wow.
So yeah, he knew Biggie Smalls.
Jeez, man,
Like,
it's a small world.
Andy Dufresne in the Shawshank Redemption, who took these guys underneath his wing and was able to educate them and get them their high school diploma or even degrees at some stage. So he was kind of that kind of, and that would be, you can understand then why he only served 9 years of a 25-year sentence. He was let go on good behavior. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because he was
always given
for exams and stuff. Yeah.
And in yoga was a big thing as well for him as well. In relation to him having his Zen, he was big into his yoga.
Savage.
And DJing, nobody mentioned the DJing.
Yeah.
And
he did a bit of DJing as well, yeah.
When he was out in Spain, I think it was a week or 2 before he arrived, and it's like he said I was booked. I said, "You're DJing, man." Yeah, he said it's going well. And he said it's going well. He said I'm getting booked. And so he said I had a booking, and he said it very quietly. It was very funny. He said I had a booking last week for the Groucho Club. I don't know, you know the Groucho Club? The Groucho Club in London is like it's like the top celebrity haunt in London. And so he said, I got a booking for the Groucho Club to do DJing. And he said, I was going, who the fuck is that? And so he turned up, and it was in a kind of private room. I've never been inside the Groucho room, but it's one of these kind of exclusive places. And he said it was like a private room, and there was like he said it was just one table with a kind of a family on it, and who was the family? It was fucking Jagger.
Yeah.
He was Jagger booked him for a private DJ session with the family. He said it was like I don't know who Jagger's kind of family is when he's rocking up in the Groucho Club, but he said it was all really discreet, and that was Jagger just said, I want Howard Marks to just do a gig for me, and that's what. So he knocked around with the ball, man.
And just on that point,
he booked the Rolling Stones for a gig in like Oxford, and then they got really famous before they had done the gig, so much so that it was kind of like insane for them to do this gig. And I think they ended up having to like pay money to get out of it, but he ended up being good friends with him, because even the gig that he did in Cork, one of the gigs in Cork I did with him, I remember he had just got back from like something like it was like maybe the 50th year of the Rolling Stones or the 40th year of the Rolling Stones. Jeez. And because I remember him talking about it, and he was like hanging out with them, you know what I mean, during their big London gig.
No, Jagger was a fan of him, which is the thing that I found funny, you know. And Jagger was gone, you know. I gotta have Howard doing my gigs.
They were definitely friends though, because Howard definitely tried to book them before they were famous for some Oxford gig. So I think they had just been actual friends throughout that time.
From that generation, you know, talking about like the electorate there as well. It was a friend of his, Lee Harris. He opened the first head shop in London, and I went over to help campaign for his London mayor bid. He didn't get it, obviously. The current mayor is the current mayor. It's not Lee Harris. But I asked him, did you know Howard Marks? And he said, yeah, of course. They're all from this generation, you know. And I think you said, Paddy, like people need to start standing up now for who's alive now and who wants to be involved now, because you know there's so many collaborations that we've done over the years, and there's so many more to be done. But we just need more people to come out.
But how many Howard Marks are actually in behind bars right now? How many? Like there's so many, I'd imagine, out there. Like many people with great potential and great storytelling abilities, like and have so much to offer to the world. Like Howard Marks, although like he lived a full life by the sounds of it. Like he is by what you're telling me here this evening. Like, and I say that's only just skimming the surface of it. Yeah. He lived a full life, even in prison. Like he managed to meet up with Biggie Smalls, and he's teaching him, and he doesn't even realize what that actually means. So like. I don't know what Biggie went on to do afterwards, like, but Howard Marks.
Well, the first thing he did coming out of prison, he revealed at the UCC gig, which I thought was very interesting. You know, people talk about the therapeutic use of MDMA. The first thing he did, you have to remember, he went to jail when his kid, I think it was the eldest or the youngest child was his son, and I think he was still an infant, like a baby, when he went to prison. So when he came out, you know, he had missed 9 years of their life, and the first thing they had done was MDMA together as a family, and I just thought that was beautiful.
Wow.
I remember him saying as well that the lowest point in his life was he was in prison, and I think it was like his son Patrick had an accident and maybe broke his arm or broke his leg or something like that, and he just said that was the lowest point in his life, that he just felt, I'm in prison and like I can't do anything, and my son is in need, you know. Which
Such
again, you can imagine that feeling. But I just remember him saying that. But yeah, about the Graham, I do remember him saying that was actually probably I think he might have said that was the best. He said doing pills with his kids was amongst the best points of his life.
He was at a festival, and he says to them, what's the music scene like, you know, because he missed when he went into the jail in America. He on the steps of the courthouse, he spoke in Welsh, and is it Super Furry Animals?
Yeah.
Hanging out with Howard
Yeah.
Marks, had the theme song, and going back to Rhys Ifans, like Rhys Ifans was just a friend of the boys from Super Furry Animals, and he met Howard at a party, and he says, "If you ever," or he says, "Will you sign my cigarette papers?" And Howard signed them.
They slept actually on a floor together after a gig, in like some living room. Him and Rhys Ifans before Rhys Ifans was anything.
Yeah.
And Ifans asked him then if there's ever a movie, can I play you?
Yeah. You know what I mean? He was no one, and Howard goes, "Oh yeah, sure." But that's the thing, Richie. Yeah, he was true to his word. His word was his bond. You know.
Well, he played him well.
Guys, on that note, I've got to leave because my word is my bond. And I said I've got to do something at 9 o'clock.
He's on a promise.
There you go. So let's do it again next year. Let's do it in a venue down in Cork, but keep the thing alive. So great to hook up, and I've got to run, guys. Yeah,
Stephen, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Anyway, I really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Good seeing you.
Ciao, guys.
But like there was a few questions would always come up. He'd do his show, and everyone would be asking him questions, a Q&A. So nothing was off limits. He'd answer it, and the one was, "What's the best spliff you ever had?" Nepalese hash in Mustang, and any regrets? No regrets. That was another thing. Like, there's no point in having regrets. You know, he knew what he was doing. He was taking risks. Yeah. And if he thought that there was going to be a regret about it, he probably wouldn't have done it. Well, that says a lot. You can appreciate that, Martin. So you can't overanalyze, and you have to believe in what you're doing. And he didn't deal in anything outside of cannabis. So he's unashamedly, it was all about making money. You know, but also using to highlight how ridiculous this thing is.
Well, I think that's an issue that we have out there, don't we?
The correct thing. I remember how he said that as well, though, because what he said with the no regrets thing is he said, he was like, "I am in a very happy place in my life right now, and there may have been a lot of different things that have happened to bring me to this place, but if you ask me if there is regrets, then." You know, because I'm in a happy place right now and everything brought me to this place, it would be wrong for me to say that there are regrets, you know?
And that's a mature way to have an outlook on life, I think, for everybody. And through his mistakes, we learn. You know, we're the generation after him, so we know not to make, mistakes like, smuggling hash around the world. But as much as that seems like a great idea. I remember we all have stories of the first time we read the book. I read the book going up to the mountains in the Rift Mountains, the largest peak in North Africa, to see how hash was made, and I went up there alone. And I remember.
I remember when you went on that trip, man.
He got me out. Howard Marks got me out of jail in some way. Not that there was any smuggling involved, but there was definitely a lot of hash involved. So I took from Cork to Malaga to Tarifa. I got a ferry across from Tarifa to Tangier. Got a 5-hour bus from Tangier to Rift Mountains. Chef Showen. I had no French. I had no Arabic. It was like there's no phones at the time, no smartphones. My hotel was booked. I was like, I didn't even know how to get there. Got off the bus, and the next day, anyway, when I woke up, I said, okay, I'm going to go for a 3-hour hike up this mountain. I don't know why. I'll just go this way. And the guy, so I come across a bunch of guys playing football out of the rocks. I mean, you're talking extreme poverty up here, So I came across a farm, and the guy said, "Oh, come with me," in kind of Spanish, and kind of we were communicating in some way, some Latin language. And I had a calculator on my phone, and we were able to talk in numbers. I said, "How much is a gram of hash?" He said, 1 gram. But he noticed the book I was carrying, and this is the book that stayed in my hand the entire trip. And it was Mr. Nice, and he looked at me. He said, "Is that your papa? Is that your dad?" I was just like, "No, but that's like, do I look like him or something like that?" So I had this weird thought throughout that trip, and I got into a bit of into a bit of trouble with a car accident, but I had to get the hell out of there. And the whole time I just had the book next to me. I was like, what would Howard do to get out of this problem? And I just had to think like him, and I was like, how do you know the hashish? And I was just like, I need to get out of Morocco, get a flight to Amsterdam and get home.
Yeah, you had a bit of a crazy story there, all right, in Morocco. But what a place to be reading his book, man. Very aptly chosen in
It
the
was
region for the
inspiring,
best hash.
no,
Like.
definitely.
Yeah.
I make a point out of like the environment in which I'm reading stuff. It like makes a huge like difference of the information that I'm taking. But he imparted that knowledge on us, and only reading or listening to the audiobook of what is it, drug stories from a dope fiend. And he says in the prologue, he says he didn't realize that it was going to be a best-selling book, Mr. Nice. He didn't realize, the highest capita per readership would be Ireland. He didn't realize, and he said it's because it's young. He said young people are using cannabis at a rate that is just so high, and he owes that to his success of the book. And some of the stories in that prequel sequel is tremendous.
But passed
anybody
down as well,
heard
though,
that.
Graham. The big guys coming to the show, father and son. Like this is I gave him the book when he started smoking. That's a very grown up thing to see that, and it's very inspiring. As I say, the amount of people that queued up to meet the man, just to shake his hand, to get a selfie, to get their book signed, and then to buy another book or buy another bit of merchandise. The shirt, we ran out of merchandise every time. We couldn't keep it in stock.
Yeah.
So, but I think that we have a nice clip as well, don't we, Martin, to kind of show how important his stage presence was.
We do, and I think we'll sign off with that one if you wouldn't mind, actually. But before we go to that, I suppose if anybody has any closing bits that they'd like to add in, but I do think that's a good clip that I will finish off with, and I'll just pop it up on the screen for people. It's homage to Howard Marks, the Woolly Welsh Wizard of Word. That's the title of the video. You find it over on YouTube if you want to watch it in your entirety or in its entirety, because it's about it's 18 minutes long. Johnny, it's made up of about 5 or 6 different parts, I think you said.
Yeah, just when he passed in 2016. We knew he was dying of cancer, in fact, and he'd been, to all the great botanists and all the great medics, and he didn't, he went out kicking and screaming, and there's a great poem that he recites. Well, not kicking and screaming, obviously, but he had so much to give. He didn't want to die. He did. It was kind of sad that he did actually have a breakdown before a few months. He did before he died, and he was telling me about that when we spent the weekend at a gig. His last gig in Ireland was in the RDS as some festival, spoken word festival. But it was amazing, and he really kind of we had a great chat that weekend, and he was just telling me about how he kind of come to terms with the whole thing eventually. But he was a big fan of the band called Love, and they were his favorite band. So we were smoking away and listening to all his favorite music. But that one was really really impressive and really poignant in relation to what he as I said, he had an awful lot more that he wanted to do. And there was a documentary in the making, The Real Mr. Nice. So I think that still has to come out. Nice. So he was a very savvy businessman, obviously, a very intelligent man, and was able to kind of communicate with everyone on any level about anything. And that is his legacy. And he was just a guy that didn't take himself too seriously, didn't take life too seriously. And as Stephen said, he's amazing turn of phrase, and he was a raconteur, and he was probably a stand-up comedian, because all his stories were true, all the anecdotes, and all hilarious. So he didn't have to make anything up. So when he was engaging with people, he was open to talking about anything. And he did, and I'm sorry, I did have something point to make, but I forgot what it was.
As a closing remark for me, Johnny, it was you entitled the tour that he did in UCC Scholar, Smuggler, Prisoner, Scribe.
Yeah.
It was a mouthful to pronounce. We had to memorize it and learn it, but in learning it, you'd have to understand the different facets of his life that he represented. He was more than just one person. He wasn't just a drug smuggler or cannabis smuggler. He did so much, and it's important, I think, for anyone who reads his book to understand that there's a lot to a person's personality or contribution to this world, and by God, did he contribute a lot and I have a lot to be thankful for everyone here, and that's why we're all actually friends and still kicking 10 years later. So yeah, thank you everyone.
I think that's spot on, Grams. Yeah, I mean, closing remarks, obviously huge for me, you know, a huge part of my life. He wrote on my guitar, which I think actually describes him, actually, even though he was trying to write a nice quote. It actually describes him more than anything. He wrote a very special energy that will last forever, and I think that actually is what he was, which is a very special energy that will last forever. But yeah, I just reiterate the Bob Dylan quote, which is, "I've got nothing but affection for all those who sailed with me."
Nice, yeah. Well, yeah.
And the poem that he would recite in the gig as well was Dylan Moran. I'm a massive fan of Dylan Moran, obviously being a fellow Welshman. Dead has no dominion.
Dylan Moran is Irish, but he actually.
Dylan Thomas. Dylan Thomas, I beg your pardon. Yeah, Dead has no dominion. I'd recommend that people light up one after this and check it out online. Howard Marks, Dead has no dominion. It really is powerful.
And is that the clip that was you were suggesting to play?
It's within the 18 minutes.
That's within there as well. Excellent.
But the one we're going to show is actually of the Waterford gig on the tour, but very, very poignant and very beautiful and very strong in relation to what the people who are meant to be looking out for our welfare are actually doing on this war against drugs. And I think he encapsulated in this 7 minutes that you're about to show beautifully.
Savage, yeah. Well, I suppose myself, I definitely think that Howard Marks definitely left a positive mark on the world. And even in death, you know, 5 years on, he's still bringing people together. His legacy lives on through us, and hopefully someday we will live in a world that Howard would like for us to live in, where people like himself are no longer criminals and lured into doing those kind of things. Yeah, guys, thanks very much, everybody, for your time here this evening. So it's been a pleasure to
thank you, Martin, as well, for doing what you do as well. Fair play to you.
No problem at all, guys. Just doing my part as Howard, I suppose, himself, you know, and just filling in where it's needed. Just doing my part, man, keeping busy. But yeah, these things need to be done as well, as we know. You know, we can't let injustice go by unchallenged. So I will start playing that clip there for everybody out there to see, and we'll end it then after that, guys. So again, thanks very much, guys. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you all here this evening. Richie, people will find yourself on Facebook, is that right?
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, even TikTok now, the children's dancing app. I'm trying to become the king of that now as well. So Richie Sheehy, that's RICHYSHEEHY.
Excellent stuff. And Johnny, do you have any place you want to send people to find more from yourself or Paradise Paddy?
Yeah. Awfully Good Vibes exists since 2005, and I think it's about time it kickstarted something in relation to bringing people together through art and activism is what I've always been about. And I was able to exchange ideas with the great man Howard, and he was great with advice. I just said, just keep bringing people together, and
excellent.
That's where we are today. So I'm delighted to call the two guys long life friends that we met through Howard, and that they're able to meet you through this as well, Martin. So when I said that the cannabis community isn't as prominent as it was, it is online. It's getting really good, and it's shows like you that's bringing it together. And if we're to learn from Howard at all, is to make the community more closer and more cohesive. That no stone are left unturned. That's my hashtag.
Yeah, I think that was said as well in Stephen's talk as well the other night by the ladies that were speaking. I think it was Paddy Amigat. She mentioned it like that. We have to recognise who the enemy is, and it's not each other. That the in-house fighting, like that, we all have the same end goal. That we really need to unite around the cause in order to maximise the noise that we make, you know, and that was the wording that they used, but I loved it. Yeah, Stephen's not here now to take that praise, but yeah, that was a great event organised by Steve. So I'll play that clip, so guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And Graham, yourself, I'll be probably seeing yourself back here on the show maybe sooner than later, wouldn't we? Maybe back next week. So yeah, we look forward to that.
Looking forward to it, Martin. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks again, Graham, and thanks, Richie, and thanks, Paradise Paddy. I'm going to hand you over to Howard Marks now, so guys, peace.
See you, lads.
That's a dragon.
That's it.
Spirit smoke, shaman smoke, dragon smoke. On 2 occasions in the Bible, the 2nd book of Samuel, chapter 22, verse 9, and the 18th Psalm, verse 8, it states that God smokes. God smokes. The exact line is, there went up a smoke from his nostrils. That means he smokes, right? God smokes, okay? I remember coming across that, because a lot of the time I was in prison, you'd only have the Bible to read, all right? So I read it several times, and coming across that line was so wonderful, stuck there in solitary confinement, no other fucking book whatsoever, that and a roll of toilet paper for origami practice and stuff like that. God smokes, oh thank fuck I haven't done anything wrong. God smokes. His son drinks, he said to drink red wine. Maybe he's all right up there, right? With God smoking and Jesus drinking, because Jesus did say, do this in remembrance of me, didn't he? He did. I'm gonna have a fucking bit. He didn't say you're supposed to sip it. He didn't, honestly. He said, do this in remembrance of me. And see, I don't want to offend anyone, but look what the fucking church has done with that, all right? A thimbleful of red wine, shite red wine, once a week or once a month. Oh, fucking hell, that's got to be disrespect, isn't it? Aren't you meant to just drink loads of red wine, get pissed, and see God and ask him for the joint he's smoking or something? It's better if I think of it like that. But who the hell give God the light? I mean, if God smokes, who give him the light? It's obvious, really, if you read your Bible, Lucifer. It means light, right? So, spirit smoke, shaman smoke, dragon smoke, God smokes, but our governments don't want us to smoke. Despite that massive fucking religious, cultural heritage, they don't want us to smoke. I wonder why not. They don't want us to smoke because they care about us. Yeah, right. They don't fucking care, right? Is that why my government sends our kids to Iraq and to Afghanistan? Because they fucking care? Is that why they don't mind how many of us get slaughtered on the roads while driving through polluted traffic jams in order to get work on time? They obviously don't fucking care, right? They don't. Not in any way that I understand the word. Plus, they also say, my government does anyway, that suicide is legal. Huh? I'm allowed to go to the top of the Houses of Parliament, right? Legally allowed to do that and dive headfirst onto the ground and kill myself. That is legal. So my government has no problem whatsoever with me killing myself quickly. It's just got a massive problem with me killing myself slowly. What the fuck is that about? I'm like, who wants to die healthy anyway? You know? Like, can you imagine waking up one day, all right, I feel really good today, my head's clear, my lungs are breathing wonderfully well, my heart is pumping like a motherfucker here, every organ in my body is in tip-top condition, I think I'll die. I want to die with every bit of my body completely ravaged by life. And I hope if there is a heavenly post-mortem, God will cut open my chest, pull apart my rib cage, look into my lungs and say, oh, fair play, you fucking used doors. All right, that ends the cultural bit, okay? That ends the cultural bit. I'm going to have a 50-minute break. I'm not going to say what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have a 50-minute break, then come on and get a bit more outrageous. All right, thank you.
So again, guys, that was the great and magical Howard Marks speaking at us at the courtesy of Johnny Keenan of Paradise Paddy. Paradise Paddy was the guy who organised all of those events, and he was the guy who sent me on over that clip and really recommended that I play that segment to you. So guys, everybody out there, thanks very much for tuning into the show this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to see an audience out there to take part in remembering such a great man. I'll be back with more of Martin's World, more 420 news to you guys on Monday. And if you haven't seen it already, guys, I did take part in a protest today. It is up on my Facebook page, so if you haven't already gone over there, give it a like and a share, and it's up on YouTube now as well, so also give it a like and share there too. So much appreciated everybody's continued support for the show, guys. I'll be back on Monday, as I say. Have a nice weekend, guys. Stay blazed out there and keep her lit. Much love.